All right, welcome back, everyone. We're ready for another deep dive, and this one's focusing on some pretty significant changes in, well, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Yeah, big changes.
especially when it comes to how the youth, the younger generation, how they fit into the future of the church, and all this stems from a really important talk by President Nelson back in October 2019.
Oh, yeah.
Witnesses, Aaronic Priesthood Quorums, and Young Women classes. I mean, that title alone, that kind of gives you a hint of what we're going to be digging into today.
For sure, that talk, it really felt like a turning point in a lot of ways. It signaled a real shift in how the church was thinking about youth and their roles.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it all starts with, well, remember those three procedural changes that President Nelson announced regarding witnesses for baptisms and sealings.
Yeah. Suddenly you had a lot more people who could participate. Like even non-members, as long as they had a temple recommend, could be witnesses for baptisms for the deceased. That was a big deal.
It was. It seemed like the church was really making an effort to make these ordinances more accessible, not just logistically, but, for families as well.
It was, opening it up, it was a really significant move. And it's important to remember, right, that those were just procedural changes. Like, they didn't change the doctrine of the ordinances themselves.
Right, exactly. The core ordinances remained, unchanged.
But what I found really fascinating was how President Nelson then, kind of in the same breath, he introduces this idea of the Lord's Youth Battalion.
Mm.
What an interesting term. Like, what do you think, when a teenager hears that, what kind of an impact does that kind of language have?
It's powerful. I mean, it definitely goes beyond just, showing up for youth activities.
Right.
It's talking about something much more active, purposeful.
Absolutely. It's like he's positioning these young people as a vital force in this grand effort of gathering Israel, essentially preparing the world for the second coming. It's like he's laying out this massive responsibility, a purpose for these young people.
That's true. It's incredibly empowering when you think about it.
Mm.
But I also wonder about, the pressure that could come with that
Yeah.
sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider what President Nelson said next about how the bishop in each ward, he's the leader of this battalion.
Yeah.
He's the one responsible for these young people.
Yeah. Wow. That's a huge responsibility. Right. You're right. It brings a whole new dynamic to the role of the bishop. I mean, he's overseeing the Aaronic Priesthood Quorums for the young men and the young women classes for the young women. It really emphasizes, that role of the bishop as a shepherd to the youth.
Definitely. And keep in mind, this was just the tip of the iceberg. President Nelson, he mentioned, like, there were going to be these additional adjustments,
Mm-hmm.
specifically relating to the young men and the young women.
Mm.
And remember, this was all happening during that same general conference, right?
Right.
We had Elder Cook, who at the time was an apostle, addressing the young men, and Sister Corden, who was the young women general president, addressing the young women. I mean, those talks were crucial for getting the full picture, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like Elder Cook, his talk, it was all about the importance of personal revelation, right? And following the prophet. And Sister Corden, she really emphasized personal worthiness and covenant keeping.
Mm.
Their messages, they really underlined these, the high expectations being placed on these young people.
They did. And ultimately, all of these adjustments, they were meant to help these young people reach their full potential.
Yes.
Yeah.
President Nelson uses that phrase, sacred personal potential, which really speaks to that individual level, right?
Mhm.
But he also talked about, the need to strengthen the organizations themselves, like the Aaronic Priesthood and the Young Women programs, and to provide support for their leaders. It was a very holistic approach. It impacted, the individual, the organization, and the leadership all at the same time.
It really was. I mean, it just seemed like this monumental shift. And it makes me wonder, has it actually had the intended effect?
Yeah.
Like, have you, in your experience, have you seen, like, more youth engagement because of these changes?
It's kind of the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's definitely anecdotal evidence out there. Like, you hear stories about youth, really stepping up and taking more initiative in their callings and maybe showing more enthusiasm for things like missionary work.
Mm-hmm.
But then, there are also challenges, right? Like, there's always that risk of overwhelming the youth, with too many responsibilities. And we have to be careful about that. We don't want to push them too hard.
Absolutely. It's a fine line between, empowering them and then overburdening them.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that, Elder Cook, he actually addressed that concern in his talk.
He did.
He specifically advised leaders to be sensitive to the needs of each individual young person.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? You have to
Yeah.
be careful. There needs to be guidance,
Right.
discernment from the leaders.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
definitely a lot to consider. It's a lot to process. And remember, like all of this was just the beginning. I
Mm.
mean, there have been even more adjustments and changes since then. But but President Nelson's closing statement in that 2019 talk, it really gets to the heart of what this is all about. He said, "They are the hope of Israel, Zion's army, children of the promised day." That's a powerful statement.
Well, yeah. That's a lot of confidence in the rising generation.
It is. It's a statement of belief,
Yeah.
and the potential of these young people. And it really does leave us with a lot to ponder.
So much to think about.
I mean, if these youth truly are the future of the church, like how will their perspectives, and their experiences, how's that going to shape the trajectory of the church? What will their leadership look like, and what kind of challenges and opportunities will they face? These are like big questions.
Such big questions. It's exciting to think about.
It is. It is. And they're questions that, we'll probably be grappling with for years to come. But for now, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. I mean, this was a big topic, and we only scratched the surface.
Barely scratched it.
So we encourage you, keep digging, keep exploring these ideas on your own.
Yeah, check out those talks and see what you think.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.